Today we have with us Mr. Anshul Chaturvedi. Anshul Chaturvedi is a senior journalist with over 25 years of experience observing everything from politics to cinema. He came across the works of Swami Vivekananda at the age of 16 and has since written about his teachings for various platforms, including The Speaking Tree and his blog for over 15 years now. So, Swami Vivekananda is a preacher, monk, and philosopher who never lived an ordinary life like we do. Then, how can his teachings be relevant to our lives?
See, what's a real life? I mean, everybody's life is different, right?
Right.
So if I have to categorize my life, I use the phrase in my books, what I call the ATM, PTM life, or you add EMIs to it. So that's the middle class salaried system, right? But that's today. The questions Vivekananda has are not bound to 2020 or 1920 or maybe 3020. At a very fundamental level, the problems people have are not that different. Losing a loved one, I don't think the experience is any different today than it was from the time of Gautam Buddha. So this is not a cop-com guy, right? He's not talking strategy. It's not date-bound, it's not time-bound. So where I come from, the question you're asking me is actually a question which I had not applied to my mind when I began consuming him. Because my consumption of him was not aimed at addressing a specific problem. And between 16 to 30, I mentioned earlier, is roughly the phase where I realized by trial and error that this is the individual who I was going to more and more frequently to address the issues which caused me stress at 18, at 22, at 25, at 30. To address are questions which impact us every single day. People who talk about philosophy, religion, life, death, these are abstract people. We should read about them when we are like in our 70s, perhaps. What relation do they have to daily life? But actually, they are far more relevant to our daily life than following Instagram handle on diet or fitness, to my mind. So that's how it's worked for me.
So the next question which came to my mind was, there is so much fear during these growing up years, which we all face. Rich and successful friends make us feel inadequate. The mirror stresses us out as we are never happy with how we look. We are constantly trying to act all cool and popular just to meet the benchmarks which are set by our peers and the society. So, how can youngsters stop seeking constant validation and live a free life, which you were able to do after reading his teachings? So, how can his teachings help deal with negative peer pressure?
Of course, the generation we grew up in, and I'm sure everybody says this to every other generation, that our time was different. But the only point was that if I sat down at some place for 3 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, when maybe I was your age, with a book, or I went out for a walk and came back after 3 hours, it was time entirely to myself. We had more time to think over things. You were not responding real time to the world. And so you weren't bothered. Like, let's say you look at a summer break in school. When I was, say, in school in class 12, so after you have you people come for the last day of school, and then they leave. And then you meet them after 2 months or 1.5 months when school reopens. Today, you never disengage with them. You are constantly in touch. So just the way your friends are always there for you, so are your enemies. Everybody is there for you all the time. And so your stimulus, your reactions are too sharp all the time. The only thing Vivekananda sort of embedded into me very early was that, if you don't praise me too much, I'm not really interested. And if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm equally not so interested. So he gave me a comfort level with isolation.
So my next question to you would be about the part 2 of this book, which talks about how no work is small or petty. Since most of our audience today are young people who will be soon kickstarting their initial careers, I'm sure there will come a time when they'll be frustrated easily with all the insignificant and petty work which will be given to them. So if we have to do something that we're not signed up for, we will obviously want to escape that route. So, what's your suggestion to them? How can we respect all kinds of work, even the smallest, the most insignificant ones, as mentioned in your book?
I'm sure the entire country is aligned towards the fact that in our cities, in our villages, perhaps we need to treat women with greater respect, generally speaking,
Right.
right? A girl stepping out at midnight does not feel very comfortable in any part of the place. Could be a big city, could be a small city.
Absolutely.
Now, is there any philosophical doubt in the fact that maybe more respect needs to be given to women by the average male in this country? Probably not. We should, maybe, because there's certain culture people get away with catcalling, with commenting, with going on social media and abusing. There are lots of people who do that. Occasionally, the police and all catch up. Mostly, they don't. Now, is it possible to say how should they be taught to respect women? I mean, how do you teach respect? That's a tough call. You can make people afraid of consequences and then they follow something. That's different. But respect cannot be taught, it cannot be written down and say, I hereby advise you to respect something. So inherently, this is about reflexes and self-education. A second party cannot come to us and give us gyan saying, kal se tum is cheez ki izzat karo. Similarly, if there's a certain aversion towards XYZ versus ABC, because they have thought of something, the universe is now duty bound to conspire to give it to me. So if I sit here and I say, no, tomorrow I want to work the New York Times only, and everything else is beneath my intellectual abilities, but the New York Times is not obligated to, be on my same wavelength. They may be downsizing people right now.
Right.
So in that sense, in the work area, too many of us, I'm not saying it's a mistake, but it's a reflex, is to sometimes look at work almost like you look at college. अरे यार मुझे एटमॉस्फेयर अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, वाइब अच्छी नहीं लग रही, कैफेटेरिया अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, that person didn't speak to me very well. It's not meant to be a recreational space, right? So inherently the expectation level sometimes goes a little awry, that we say, no, I am okay for these jobs and that brand and this city and this company, and the life comes to you and says, hey, you're getting opening in that company, in that city, and doing that job. You say, nah, this is not what I am. But how do you know what you are? And by dissing it, you are being something which you should not be. Because then you're drawing a hierarchy, that the person who's doing that job is inferior to you. Now, where Vivekananda clarified that structure for me very early, and I was making the same mistakes. It's not that I was not making those mistakes. But the rationality of his thought, which was that how you perform a job, defines you more than what job you're doing. And then when you sit back and you understand that, and you do a reality check of life around you, so then you look at some of the most flamboyant jobs. I mean, say, some part of my job involves looking at how cinema works. And of course, being a hero or a heroine in a movie is really cool job, right? People want you in front of the camera. Script writing में किसको interest है? It doesn't, your face doesn't come there. So writing a lyric, writing a script, being an AD versus being the hero. Of course, the hero is the job to be done. And people think, oh my God, if I get a crack at being a hero, my life is made, and that's the route to success. And how many heroes have you seen in the last decade whose dads launched movies to make them heroes? And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because the way you've done your job is not thorough enough. So people have been given, I mean, this is also second argument in the sense that, luck and somebody else has got something which they didn't deserve and I got left behind. So you get a sense of animosity or anxiety or angst that A has got this break ahead of me. That too, that angst, so the angst of somebody's got something ahead of me, and the angst that I have got something not so cool and other people have got something very cool. These two things he sort of cut out from me philosophically very early. So even if you have become an actor, are you a thorough actor? Are you a professional actor? That's more important. And that's part of how we are culturally. It's not really the fault of any kid. And so तुम क्या बनोगे becomes कि तुम्हारे घर में monthly salary कैसे आएगी? मोटा. So if you're not got to that benchmark there, sometimes it's, but you did nothing with your life. But maybe I did a lot with my life, but because I'm not IIT IIM, you think I did nothing. So then that habit, that reflex makes us draw that hierarchy. So the inherent constant obsession with hierarchical things makes people think, no, this is not what I deserved. especially in India, have, I think, fallen into the trap of identifying every young person's success or failure in life, especially between 20 and 30, by saying, beta, kahan kaam kar rahe ho, kya kaam kar rahe ho, kitna kama rahe ho. And if those things are not matching out, you think the person is doing nothing with their existence. Whereas perhaps evolving mentally, I mean, staying fit physically, being something, and maybe being kind and not being, just a nasty, pompous, rich person is also part of what you are.
This technology driven world, we can no longer focus and be fully dedicated to what we are doing at that present moment. So, when we are doing our work or studying, how can Swamiji's teachings again can help us concentrate and be present in that moment instead of thinking about the future?
Gyan is, today, Gyan is meant to sound cool. And then it gets made into memes and WhatsApp forwards and structures, and you put a face and you write 4 lines. It reads very quick. It's not meant to be applied. Mostly it's not applicable. So I could give you some random pointless sentiment, but it's not executable. Now, what is executable is to understand the damage it does to you. Because the temporary thrill of constant engagement, and it's not that I don't have it myself now. I mean, my first mobile phone I held in my hand when I was like 25, 26. That's when phones came. For the first time, I saw what a mobile phone was.
Whoa.
But am I as much of an addict as you? Probably. A part of it's because I have a job which needs me to track things now. And things always happen online. So I do, what I do is, yes, I ensure that I check each week what my screen time is. But I have also realized that, for instance, if I have to have a chat with you today, right, I will minimize the phones this morning. Because the mind is into too many layers. So till I have 2-3 hours of thought about a topic, the mind is not settled enough. If I want to go and watch a movie in a hall, which is a movie with a message, after coming out, I don't want to check the phone for half an hour. Because the absorption is not happening. I'm not getting time to reflect. There's no way to, give some punchline and say, here, this saying of Vivekananda will help you tomorrow. When you are not dependent so much on feedback and views, when you learn to be comfortable by yourself in a closed room for X amount of time, when you learn to be still, then the need for all sorts of stimulus, whether it is validation or it is excitement, it subsides. Because subconsciously also what happens is that all your identity, your self-identity, it draws on all that every morning. What is your gender? What is your age group? So no, are you a millennial? Are you a Gen Z? Are you a Gen X? Your language, your nation, all your identities, they keep reinforcing every single morning. And you think in those contexts. You think from the perspective of your language, your region, your gender, your culture, your age. It's important to switch off those markers and sit down and, maybe just once in a month, sit down for half an hour and say, okay, if I have to write my obituary right now, how to write it? Where others' opinions don't matter. So there is no trick. There is no nicotine patch to put on here and say, hey, I am giving you this, put this on your hand and you won't feel the need to, buy a cigarette tomorrow morning. There's no such easy solution. You have to need your solitude. You have to need your time with yourself, the switching off. And when that becomes an addiction with you, then that addiction grows stronger than other addiction.
Right. So there are many times when we fail and struggle, maybe even more than the number of times you were actually happy. So the near future is always a phase of tension, be it failing the math paper or not being able to get that promotion we wanted for a very, very long time. So you've written an entire chapter on how to deal with failure using Swamiji's teachings. If you could elaborate the same and tell us how can we embrace failure and be comfortable with all the phases of life that can go wrong or are going wrong right now with us.
All of us handle failure more often than we handle success. Even statistically, and even academically, right? Every single time you have any entrance examination, be it the UPSC, be it the CAT, obviously the number of people who are celebrating is less, number of people who are saying I didn't get through is more. So even statistically, at any given point of time, the need to handle not getting something is more widespread than the need to celebrate getting it. I think it is to come back to the original point we had made, that the ecstasy at getting it is also not very high. That if I get something, is it necessarily for my good? I'm not very sure. So when I was, let us say, roughly your age, or maybe younger, and I remember writing this in a diary at one stage, that, everything I wanted at, say, 17 or 18, philosophically, my life goals,
Right.
by 28, every single one of them had been dashed. And I was doing things completely out of my original diary, so to say. And hindsight, I was reasonably okay. And I was glad that half the things I wanted did not happen to me. So what you want at a given stage is what you want at that stage. Maybe 10 years later, you are happy not to have got that. You are also an element which changes, no? You aren't constant. As a 5-year-old, what you want is a box of chocolates. Maybe today you are not that desperate for it, but you were at 5 perhaps. So now, should our parents have given you a box every morning because you wanted it? Not necessarily. So what we want, what we need is not a static entity. We are not static. The point here is that it's not that Vivekananda writes you a one-liner here, but the worldview he gives you is that getting things or not getting things. And what things in particular? So the line I'm sure you would have read when you went through the book is when he summed up in one sentence: let fame and money and name go, for they are a terrible burden. Now, people said, oh, what does that mean? Kya hum garib ho jaye?
Ambition now.
He did not say, friends, actively go and burn your cash. He said, if they go, let them go. Which, if you extrapolate this to the larger story, it's almost like death, right? It's not that acceptance of death means you should take your life tomorrow morning. But if it goes, when it goes, it'll any case go, right? It's not that you have a choice or I have a choice. So the acceptance of loss, the acceptance of what goes, and what he's saying is not a one-off, it's not a standalone. So where Vivekananda sort of engaged with me also in my teen years was, and I made this point earlier in some context, that because the popular culture I was consuming also aligned to what he was saying to me. Now, normally that doesn't happen. Normally, what a Guruji will tell you and what cinema will tell you are very different things. No? In fact, Guruji will tell you, "Tum picture dekhte ho, time waste karte ho apna." But the time when I was engaging with Vivekananda is the time when the thoughts of his, which were not that strongly embedded in me, but they were like in the mind. They were getting root. Right. And in popular culture, something I would like very much, and then I would say, oh, these two things are sort of together. So if Gurudutt and Pyasa were to be flamboyant and say, "Ye duniya agar mil bhi jaye to kya hai?" That sentiment of matlab big deal. Maybe you get rich tomorrow. So if in my favorite, of course, was Devan in those years, and Hum Dono remains a cult classic, at least for many, including me. And so matlab barbadiyon ka jasn manata chala gaya. So sometimes that thought crosses the mind na, कि मतलब क्या ज्ञान दे रहे हो, क्या हम लोग समझ रहे हैं, because कल और आएंगे, मुझसे बेहतर, तुमसे बेहतर. So in that sense, everything which held lightly to these things, like what is this going to stay with? Why are you taking that getting that name in that list so seriously, as if it is life itself? So he says, let it go. And that makes me stop and think. And then I analyze it. Name and fame and money. And then you realize that a lot of people who have money, and like I said to you previously about careers and all of that, right? That people have invested crores to build brands and build names and build stars, and it has not worked for them.
Yeah.
Others with no money have actually risen through ranks, and today maybe you go on a TV show and a child is singing, and the child is brilliant. And maybe there's no money behind the family, but people see that talent sometimes. It doesn't happen always. But money is not something you need to go out of the way to throw out of your house, but the loss of money. He said, don't overrate it. If it goes, let it go. So similarly, stature, name, an increment, a job offer, do your best for it. If it goes, And much later, by my 30s, I began to understand the last part also, fame. And initially, it does matter, especially when you are young, what people think of you, how they think of you. And much later, I sort of came to peace with the point that fame is, what is fame except the opinion of others? So if the very outset, the thought starts with, I do not care for the opinions of others, then why should fame matter? So throughout, he sort of makes you unlearn your basic desire, because as middle class India, these things you hold on to obsessively. We hold on to loss of money. Damn it, we lost money. Health-wise, we are not so stressed sometimes. But money going becomes very stressful.
Right. So I think that's what that's what at least I can make out of it is, do not be too attached to anything, be it fame, money, success, or even love. Which brings me to my last question. There is one more thing that we all struggle with these days, which is love. It is so difficult to love someone and even more difficult to let go. So Swamiji did not believe in gushy romance or detachment. So, according to him, what was true love?
Personally, I'm not a fan of the Kabir Singh model of Ashiki. And today, in too many things, I mean, we have violent love, if I may use that phrase.
Yeah.
That my love for my culture or my belief system or my heritage makes me violent. My love for an individual makes me violent. My love for the boundaries of my space. If you park your car in my area, I'll burn your car. If your dog wakes me up, I'll try to shoot it at night. I mean, there is this angsty love, and mistaking ownership and mistaking proprietary reflexes for love is what gets you the stories of acid attacks in this country.
Right.
Because that is ownership. So the point is, again, Vivekananda was not writing in the age of acid attacks and the Kabir Singh space of equations, but I'll read out what I put in here. True love can never react so as to cause pain, either to the lover or to the beloved. Suppose a man loves a woman. He wishes to have her all to himself and feels extremely jealous about her every movement. He wants her to sit near him, to stand near him, and to eat and move at his bidding. He is a slave to her and wishes to have her as his slave. That is not love. That is the kind of morbid affection of the slave insinuating itself as love. It cannot be love because it is painful. If she does not do what he wants, it brings him pain. Now, on that pain, we have 10 blockbusters in Bollywood. The pain of she not doing what he wants. And we call that love. And so we mainstream that this is it. So I mean, to have Mary Kiran onwards, or even, I mean, of course, right from the 60s, 70s, all folklore. So I put this in to make the point that ownership is not love. I question when I wrote this. I wrote 2, 3, 4 pages on this, and so I'll end it with what I wrote here. We may not be able to live up to Vivekananda's ideal of what love should be, for it is a very high one. But we can perhaps reprimand ourselves when our demonstration of love is very close to what he says it should not be. And I'm not just talking, teenage. Even parents' love for their child. The very South Asian reflex. I hope your mom won't scold me for this, but the very South Asian reflex of, beta, I know what's best for you. I love you so much. And sometimes in the extreme of that is, people kidnap children. People people bribe cops to bring back children who left home because, without their permission, he or she went there. And extreme case there, like in acid attacks, is honor killings. That you betrayed my love. I loved you so much, yet you did something against me. Now I will hang you from a tree. Wow, that's very interesting model of love. But I guess it's ownership. We call it love because we are conditioned to call it love. Just we were conditioned to answer the question, बेटा क्या बनोगे? मैं तो इंजीनियर बनूंगा. अरे ये सवाल थोड़ी था. So gentleness in love, so to say, or the non-ownership reflex of things is something which we treat as not so cool. You know, the really passionate guy is supposed to be cool. He makes for the best cinema character. जुनूनी आशिक है भाई. अब वो जुनूनी 25 पर है. 55 पर will you be able to handle it at home? You will kill him only. It looks good in stories. The point I'm making is this is not just about BFGF points. Yeah. Essentially, it could be your equation with your sibling, with somebody, with anybody. The relationship point. यार I mean लोग यारों से लोग कत्ल करते हैं आपस में. अबे यार तूने मुझे बदल होता है कैसे कर दिया? That man has a life, yeah. Just because he's your friend from 10 years, he doesn't have to send you a memo on his life every morning. But people feel betrayed. You got married without telling me. Really. But you are not a party to the marriage, no? You weren't part of it to other people. So this ownership in relationships, which we call, I care for you so much. Ergo, I need to have a stamp of ownership about things that you do. That does lead to angst, obviously. So here, I'm not saying he told you what to do, or maybe he did. But what he said, and I wrote that as much that, if what he's talking, or what Ramkrishna Paramahansa talks, this is the league above everyday living. It will take us a lifetime to get there. But at least in reverse, we can perhaps reprimand ourselves when our demonstration of love is very close to what he says it should not be. Is our love closer to obsession? Are we becoming control freaks? Is there more of a sense of ownership than of affection? Is angst, anger, the inability to let go, to give space, is it the definer of our most important interpersonal equations? Are we slaves to relationships and want the others to be our slaves as well? Does a bond with somebody bring a sense of calm, of stability, or is it a series of emotional swings, mostly painful, that we are unable to disengage from since we are, well, quote unquote, in love? Then perhaps it is time to ask ourselves if it is, to quote Vivekananda, mistaking something else for love.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. And before ending this session, I would really urge to my audience to get a copy of this book and read it, because it's going to help you in some way or the other. So thank you so much, Anshul, for being here today. And I really hope to see you in Faridabad at Books and Beyond.